I do not tell this story to frighten you, but to remind you that not all riches come from honest hands, and some men will pay any price for power. I saw it happen with my own eyes in Ekondo, my village. I was there when the Shadowless man arrived, and I was there when he was taken. Many years ago, when I was just a boy, there was a man named Maisie Okafor. He was not like the rest of us, where we rose with the sun and tilled our farms, sweating under the gaze of the great baobab tree. Okafor did not labor, where our hands were calloused from harvesting yams and fishing in the great river. His was smooth, like those of a man who had never worked a day in his life. Yet, he was the wealthiest among us. His house stood tall at the village square, its walls painted the color of ripe palm fruit. He wore clothes finer than any we had seen, made of fabric so rich they shimmered in the sunlight. His wives, 3 of them, dressed in coral beads and gold earrings, their heads held high as if they belonged to royalty. At first, we did not question it. Some men are simply blessed, we thought. Some men are born with wealth in their destiny. But then, strange things began to happen. It started with old Papa Jeed, the palm wine tapper. One evening, he was seen laughing and drinking under the great iroko tree, his gourd of wine in hand. The next morning, he walked through the village looking confused, lost. But that was not what made people whisper. It was his shadow. It was gone. It was. You see, in our village, a man without a shadow is not a man at all. Shadows are tied to the soul. Without one, you are neither living nor dead. Papa Jide became a hollow man. He forgot his own name, wandered the village like a ghost, and within 3 days, he was dead. Then it happened again and again. Young and old, men and women, one by one, their shadows vanished, and within days, their bodies followed. We turned to the elders, but even they had no answers. Some said it was the work of witches, that a powerful spirit had descended upon Ekondo, taken what it pleased. Others whispered of a curse, that we had offended the gods. Fear gripped us, and we began to watch our shadows, praying that they would not leave us. It was the village priestess, Mama Ifeoma, who saw the truth first. She was a woman of great wisdom, her hair as white as the moon, her voice like the rustling of dry leaves. One night, she called the elders together beneath the sacred tree and spoke. "The gods have revealed the thief," she said. "It is a man, not a spirit, who walks among us." We gasped. A man? Who among us could wield such terrible power? Mama Ifeoma pointed her staff at the house of Mazi Okafor. "The wealth you admire," she continued, "is built upon the lives of others. Okafor has sold his soul to the Dark Ones. He has learned the forbidden art. He steals shadows, and with them, he steals life itself." A chill ran through the crowd. Suddenly, the riches of Okafor no longer seemed like blessings. They were curses bought with the suffering of our people. The very next morning, a stranger came to our village. He was tall, his skin dark as night, and his eyes burned like embers in a dying fire. But it was not his presence that struck us with fear. It was the absence of his shadow. He walked through the village square, his bare feet making no sound, his robe flowing like water. He did not look left or right. He was searching for one man. That evening, The village gathered outside Okafor's grand house. The shadowless stranger stood at his gate. His voice was deep, heavy, like thunder rolling over distant hills. "You have taken what does not belong to you," he said. "Now, you must return it." Okafor stepped outside, his confidence like a mask. He laughed. "Who are you to speak to me this way? Do you know who I am?" The stranger did not move. "I know what you are." For the first time, we saw fear in Okafor's eyes. "You made a bargain with the Dark Ones," the stranger continued. "They gave you power, but you forgot one thing. No man escapes the price. The shadows you have stolen will now return to their owners, and you will pay what is owed." Okafor turned to run, but it was too late. The wind rose, howling like a mourning mother. The trees trembled, and the ground beneath us shook. From the darkness, shadows began to rise, long, twisting figures with hollow eyes and whispering voices. One by one, they lunged at Okafor. He screamed, clawing at the air, but the shadows wrapped around him, pulling, dragging. His fine clothes tore. His gold rings fell to the ground. He begged, but the gods do not listen to thieves. And then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. After that night, the village changed. The stolen shadows returned to their rightful owners, and no more lives were lost. The wealth that had once filled Okafor's house turned to dust, his riches fading like morning mist. His wives left, his grand house crumbled, and soon there was nothing left to remind us of the man who stole shadows. Nothing except a whisper in the wind, a warning passed down from elder to child. Beware of the man whose shadow does not follow him, for some bargains can never be broken, and the dark ones always come to collect. I tell you this story not to scare you, but to remind you, greed has its price, and not every road to wealth is meant to be walked. If you ever see a man without a shadow, do not speak to him, do not follow him, and above all else, do not make the mistake of thinking he is still a man.